Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to get into my January recap. So all the books I read in January I'm going to share about. And then I also wanted to get into my February TBR, all the books I'm hoping to read this month. So I hope that this past month, whether you guys read 20 books or you read one book, that you were able to learn and enjoy and read something and find something that you really love, because that's why we read, right? Because we love it and we enjoy it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into my January recap. The first book I read in 2024 was What You Wish For by Catherine Center. I loved this book. I love Catherine Center's writing. I think I've mentioned that I've just fallen in love with the way that she writes, the way that she creates stories and characters. But this one specifically is about a librarian. Her name is Samantha, but she goes by Sam. And basically the principal at her school, who is beloved, unexpectedly dies, and they have to bring in a replacement for him. And the replacement that they bring in is none other than Duncan, who is a guy that she used to work with at a school back where she used to teach, who she had a major crush on, and now he's here as her principal. But he's a lot different than she remembered. The overall theme of the story is just like joy, perseverance, and I really loved just, again, the way that Catherine Center weaves these like deep life lessons into her stories, the way that the characters connect on such a deep level, the way that, again, this book just focuses on joy and perseverance. It was so fitting for this to be my first book of 2024, because I think joy is something that I'm really trying to practice and be better at this year, and so I think it's just so perfect that I read this book at the very beginning. I finished it the first week of 2024. This is a closed-door romance. I gave this book a 90 out of 100. I think it will be one of my top books of the year, as I think all of Catherine Center's books will be. And I also have a quote I wanted to share from this book along the lines of joy and perseverance and all of that. It says, "She knew that joy and sorrow walked side by side. She knew that being alive meant risking for one another. And she also knew, as I was starting to understand in a whole new way, that it was always better to dance than to refuse." So that's another thing. If you read this book, there's a lot of talk about like dancing that goes along with joy, which I also think is fitting, because dancing more and just like being silly and joyful is, again, something that's on my list. It's something I want to do more of this year in 2024. So I loved this book by Catherine Center. So jumping into the second book I read in 2024, that was Sweetbriar Cottage by Denise Hunter. This book is also closed door. It's a contemporary romance, and it follows Noah and Josie. So they are actually exes. They were married, and they find out that they are still married, even though they thought they got divorced from the IRS when it's tax season. And so they find out they're still married, and in an attempt to like right this wrong and actually properly file their divorce, they end up getting snowed in together at Noah's cabin in the North Georgia mountains. It's set in like this wintry mountain, just cozy scene. And so they get snowed in the mountains. The story happens in the span of like a week, so I feel like it just feels pretty fast paced, but at the same time just feels so cozy because you're just in this cabin with just the two of them. This story deals with like shame and forgiveness and unconditional love, and I think that the way that Denise Hunter writes this story is just so beautiful, in that just like how you can be yourself with another person and have someone accept you for who you are. I really loved this romance. It was so sweet, it was so cozy, like I said, and I gave this book an 82 out of 100. I think that it's the perfect read if you want like a cozy romance, especially this time of year, especially if you live somewhere where it's cold and snowy and you have a fire, things like that. I think it's a perfect book to just snuggle up with, especially in the wintertime. The next book I read was Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welsh. This is the second book. It's kind of like a follow-up in an interconnected standalone to Love and Gelato, which they made, I think it was like a Netflix movie. So Love and Gelato is like an Italy-based young adult book, and then this one is set in Ireland. So this one is about Addie, and her family goes to Ireland for her aunt's wedding. And after the wedding, she's supposed to go with her brother to Italy to visit her friend Lena, who is the girl from Love and Gelato. And basically it ends up where her and her brother are staying in Ireland, but they're going on this like crazy musical road trip with her brother's internet friend Rowan that lives in Ireland. And so you're just following the three of them on this like epic road trip through Ireland, seeing the sights. I feel like it has all of the perfect like young adult high school like nostalgic vibes of just like people not always just being what meets the eye. Like you can't just label someone a football player or an athlete or whatever, and people can have more layers. And she's dealing with heartbreak from a relationship, but then, you know, meeting this new guy that her brother's friends with, Rowan, and being open to new things. She's got this relationship with her brother. They're hiding this from their mom. And so I feel like it's just like the perfect young adult romance adventure. I think Love and Gelato, I read that years ago, but I think Love and Gelato maybe was a little heavier on the romance, and this one is a little more like family adventure, but there's still a little bit of romance. And I also just think the like European country things is so fun, and like feeling like you're traveling with them and experiencing these new cultures together is so fun. So I gave this book a 61 out of 100. I think that it was really, really cute and well done for a young adult book. I think it just felt a little bit too young adult for me, but I think if I was still like in high school, I would like love this book. I still feel like it gave me all the, like I said, just like nostalgia for high school and that time in your life when you're just adventuring, you're dealing with heartbreak and love and your parents saying no to things. Like I think it gives all of that, and it feels very nostalgic. And I still plan on reading the third one, which is Love and Olives, which I believe is set in Greece. The next book is the only nonfiction book I read in January, and that is Bringing Up Bébé by Pamela Druckerman. This is essentially a book about an American mom who is raising her kids in France, and she's sharing all about the differences between American parenting and French parenting. And as a teacher, I took all kinds of like child development classes. I hope to be a mom one day. I just find these kinds of like teaching, parenting, child development topics and books so fascinating. And so I really, really loved the way that she wrote it. So Bringing Up Bébé is like, it's kind of memoir-esque, just like a journal of things she's learned, but in like story form as her kids are growing up. So she shares about how they teach their kids to sleep differently and the foods they eat and all these things she'd noticed as an American mom in Europe of how come their kids aren't picky like mine, or how come their kids sleep through the night and mine don't, and what she learned and the differences she saw and things that she implemented and things like that. Anyways, if any of that sounds interesting to you, I really love this book. I gave it a 66 out of 100. It wasn't my favorite nonfiction book I've ever read. It's definitely different than a lot of books that I read, but I still really enjoyed it. I feel like I pulled a lot of information from it that I will save and reference, like the highlights I saved later. So that is Bringing Up Bébé. The last book I read in January was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This book was truly so good. This book is about Hannah. She is an executive protection agent or a bodyguard, and she is assigned to protect Jack, who is a famous movie star. But the catch is he has to go home because his mom is sick and he doesn't want his family to worry or know that he needs a bodyguard. So she pretends to be his girlfriend and is like living at the house with his family. This is a closed door romance. It has a little bit of cussing, but not a ton at all. And I loved the romance in this book. Like I said before, I think Catherine Center does a really great job of writing romance with like still a general fiction, women's fiction kind of plot. This one was heavier, I feel like, on the romance than the other two I've read, which was great because I loved the romance in this book. I really loved Jack's character, and just having a famous person, I think, in a book adds a unique element of like you get to see behind their facade of who they portray themselves as in the public eye and then who they are with like their person or their family or whatever. And I think that is actually really relatable because even if you're not famous, I think everybody has a persona that they emulate. They have a facade sometimes that they portray to people that aren't, you know, the people that they're super, super, super close to. And so I think that was really relatable. But then I also think the bodyguard aspect of it gives it this like unrelatable, unattainable kind of thing that's really interesting to read about because it's so out of touch with your own life, because most people don't have bodyguards. So I love that. I loved seeing Jack with his family and his mom. I think that really humanized him and just gave him, again, more depth to his character. And I just loved the romance. It kept me guessing. It had me smiling. Like, I loved it. And so if you're looking for romance, especially this time of year, I would definitely recommend this book by Catherine Center. Okay, so now it's time to get into my February TBR. So I read 5 books in January, and that was actually my goal. So I feel like 5 books for me is just a really attainable, practical number. If I read more, great. But especially because I like to read nonfiction too, I feel like that takes me longer to like digest and process and take notes on or whatever. And so I try not to put too much on my plate. So I have 2 nonfiction books I'm hoping to read in February, and then we'll get into the fiction books as well. The first nonfiction book on my February TBR is Holy Huga by Jamie Erickson. It's creating a place for people to gather and the gospel to grow. I've been wanting to read this book all winter, and I have like 1 month left of winter, so I'm going to get to it this month. But basically, if you don't know, hygge is like the Danish word for like cozy and comfort and all of that. And so my understanding is that this book is all about just like using a biblical lens to look at that practice and seeing how we can use it as a tool to love others and practice hospitality and all of that. So I'm super excited to get into this one in February. And the second nonfiction book on my February TBR is Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. This is Be with Jesus, Become like Jesus, Do as He Did. I shared about this book in my 24 new releases in 2024. This one came out like the second week of January. So I'm really excited to get into this one. All of John Mark Comer's books that I've read have been phenomenal. They've been books that I think about like all the time, books that have changed different habits and practices in my life, and I have a feeling this one will be no different. So I'm really excited about this one too. Okay, and for the fiction books on my February TBR, I picked all Valentine's Day themed romances. I feel like one, I've just been really into romances right now. That's what I just feel like I'm craving and wanting to read. And also it's Valentine's Day, it's love month, and so I just feel like that is appropriate. So if you're looking for some books for Valentine's Day to put on your TBR, I've got you covered. Okay, so the first book that is on my list is actually a collection of 6 short stories by some pretty well-known authors, and the collection is called the Improbable Meet Cute Collection. So there's a short story by Christina Lauren, Abby Jimenez, Sally Thorne, Jasmine Guillory, Ashley Poston, and Sarah Wilson. So there's 6 short stories. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so I just downloaded all the books from there. And I believe all of them take place like around Valentine's Day. Like it was just released recently, so I feel like they wrote it for this purpose. And I'm really excited to just get into these. I think they're like 60-ish page stories, so just to have like a quick one to read in a day or two, I think will be really fun. And I don't know if I should count this as reading 6 books or reading 1 book, so let me know what you think I should do, because that would really up my reading count for February. But anyways, the next book on my February TBR for fiction for Valentine's Day themed is My Phony Valentine by Catherine Walsh. This one is about a restaurant owner, Poppy, and a bad boy hockey player, Dallas, which, tell me why I like love those names. I think those are such cute names. But anyways, basically I believe it's a fake dating romance that happens around Valentine's Day, and the hockey thing makes it like wintry, which I feel like will be great this time of year. And I believe this is also a closed door romance, so I'm really excited to read one of Catherine Walsh's books and see how I feel about her romance and her writing. So this one is also on my February Valentine's Day TBR. And the last book on my TBR for February, again, I read 5 books this past month, and I'm trying to only do 5 or so this month, and so the Improbable Meet Cute collection makes it feel like it's like 11, but I'm counting that as one. So this is my 5th for my TBR, and that is The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. This is a young adult romance about a girl named Emily who's basically living this like Groundhog Day trope where she's having the same day, and the day she's repeating, I believe, is Valentine's Day. And so I think this will be such a fun one. Maybe I'll even read it just like on Valentine's Day. I'm really excited to read a young adult romance by Lynn Painter. I've only read one of Lynn Painter's books, and that was Accidentally Amy. I was reading in the fall time just because it seemed real fall and cute. It's an adult romance, and I ended up DNFing it because it had so much spice for me. Like, it just felt like the whole book had no plot and it was just spice. And so I ended up putting it down. I didn't even finish that one. So I'm excited to give her young adult romances a try because I've heard so many good things about her writing, and I'm gonna give her adult romances another chance too, but I feel like maybe this one will be right up my alley. That is all the books I am planning on reading in February. Go ahead and comment down below a book that you are planning on reading this month. I would love to know what is on y'all's TBR. And if you're interested in seeing my reviews, my thoughts of these books that are on my TBR for this month, go ahead and subscribe because I am planning on making a video just like this one for February and my March TBR. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, friends.